Morning, guys. It's Eldon here at the Win-Win Family, and I wanted to take some time today to answer a really profound question that was asked on our community board the other day. And it's fun. This is what this whole concept of having a community of people together is all about, is coming up with questions that we don't completely understand and asking for answers and finding those answers. And really, this question was asked by one of the members of the community that had joined up, and she had read a book that we highly recommend called Love and Respect by Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. And this book has taught some really incredible principles that especially are applicable in the marriage situation. But they also, because it's talking about men and women, they have an application in our raising of our children too, because obviously we have boys and we have girls, and when we are the parent, we are one or the other, and if especially those kids are not, if I'm a male and I'm talking to my daughters, there's obviously some things that I don't understand, right? We know that. So this book goes right to the heart of that. Well, she asked a question, and the thing I love about this question is it showed some really profound thought had gone into what she had learned from reading that book. And she was asking about her take on a particular situation from a post that I put in last week that was about self-respect versus self-esteem. And here's the cool thing. What happened to me is, as I sit down and pondered this for several days, and Penny and I talked about it quite a bit, was we realized that the answer to her question is exactly the reason why we focus on principles here at the Win-Win Family, not on strategies and other ideas. Because if we don't look for a true principle to base the way we're acting towards other people on, we might think that we're doing the right thing and yet be just a little bit off. And this happened to us all the time in the raising of our family, and it's why we're so passionate about this, because we would start down a path that we thought was correct, and when we got there, either we would realize in the moment that it wasn't working, or worse yet, and this is what happens when you get to be an old geezer like me and you've raised a big family, you get a lot of time and track record under your belt, and you go, I get it now. The thing might have looked like it was working at the moment, but in the long term, 10, 15, 20 years into the process of using that principle that we thought was true, did it get the result that we wanted, or did it actually produce a different result? And that's why I love this question today. And so I'm going to launch into this, and I'm going to have to hurry or I'm going to bore you guys to tears. And so I'm not going to go into massive depth on this topic, but I'm going to talk about it enough that hopefully will make you curious and go, I want to dig into that more. And probably there'll be other posts and other videos and podcasts that we'll make that will go deeper into this. But it really comes down to this. So I talked about in that post that she was responding to about how it's so important for us to help our children and ourselves develop self-respect. And self-respect is not something that you just automatically give yourselves just because. What I believe, and I've come to differentiate into these two terms because there's so much in use today, is that is what we refer to today as self-esteem. That I value, I hold myself, I give myself value because I am. And there is some value to that, and that's actually going to be part of what we're discussing here. But the concept that I was getting at, and there are actually studies out there that show that if you go into the prison system and you start interviewing prisoners, hardened criminals, lifelong criminals, you'll find that most of them have a very high opinion of themselves. And yet they're doing wrong things all the time. And that's because they've been taught to have an unconditional respect or esteem for themselves. And or maybe they have been taught, maybe they just decided that at some point in their lifetime, that, hey, I can do anything that I want and it's okay because I'm the one that gets to say that it's okay. And what I was teaching in that post is that we want to teach our children to do things and become the type of people and accomplish things that they can respect themselves for, versus sitting around and doing nothing or doing disrespectful things or things that they shouldn't be proud of and saying, but I am who I am because I am. And that's the concept that I believe we really need to teach people. And I need to practice that more myself. And so I'm going to dig into this a little bit deeper here now. So the concept of that book, Love and Respect, is that in a male-female relationship, women deeply need one thing more than, let's say, any other thing. And we would think that when I say this word, that men need that same thing. But the reality of it is men have a different, they're wired differently, and they require a different stimulus or input or whatever in order to receive that same feeling, self-satisfaction, whatever it is. And those two words are love and respect. And he talks about in there how we're taught all the time that we should have unconditional love for other people around us. That's part of our spiritual teachings in most religions and different things like that. But interestingly enough, we go into a male-female relationship, and men, we know we're supposed to love our wives. A lot of us don't do a good job of it, but we're supposed to love our wives. That's what they need to feel. And because nobody ever teaches the flip side of that, the assumption is, because of what we read for the most part, that women, we need to love our husbands. And what's interesting is you'll talk to guys, you read books about this subject and everything else, you'll hear dozens, if not hundreds of guys in your circle of influence who say, I know my wife loves me, but I don't think she likes me. And that comes from having that respect piece not be there. Men, and just ladies who are listening to this, so that you know, we men, for the most part, we crave the respect of our peers, of people that we respect, of our wives, of people around us. It's something, it's hardwired into us. It's how we operate. And we do things to try to earn the respect of other people a lot of the time. Now, that's not always true. I get that. And anytime we're talking about these things, we're talking about a general principle, not something that's 100% accurate all the time. But it's something that you should look at in your relationship. Am I, as a man, am I showing my wife and telling her in whatever way that she needs to hear this, that I love her, that she is highly esteemed by me from a love standpoint? And wives, to your husbands, they desperately need to feel respected. And honestly respected, not artificially respected. And so it's sometimes, you run into women, they say, well, he doesn't do anything that's respectable. And the challenge of the book and from us is stop and look closer, because every man does something that is worthy of your respect. And if you will honestly be respectful of him about that thing, you might be surprised that it gets better. He starts changing and becoming and doing other things to be more respectable, because all of a sudden he found, hey, here's a source of respect that I've craved my whole life, and finally I'm getting it. And so he'll do more things to get more of that. So that's, in a nutshell, the concept of love and respect. Well, in the book, and I believe that's where this lady got the information that she was using, it talks about unconditional love being what females need, and unconditional respect being what males need. Now, I'm not sure if the unconditional word got applied to the respect thing because it's been a while since I read the book. But I think it did. And it doesn't matter because that was how she took it and understood that the men need unconditional respect. So her question was, and this is a deeply profound question, she says, so shouldn't I then teach my children to have, especially my boys, to have unconditional respect for themselves? Which is not, unconditional means it's not based on something that they're doing or what else. It's because they exist, they're real, they have value, that kind of thing. And as I read that, I'm going, I see what she's saying. It makes a lot of sense if you think through it the way I'm perceiving that she thought through it. And so here's not to say you were wrong, that's not the point. It's that let's look more deeply at this and see if there is a principle that we haven't quite seen clearly. Because as we discussed and talked about it, I kind of had a light bulb come on and go, that's it. Because at the core, she's right. I think we just have to get the words and the semantics right so that we understand the principle and can apply it 100% correctly. Because I think what she was doing was awesome. So as we talked about it, we went, okay, first of all, let's don't go there. Let's start with another thing. Yeah. Okay, so I learned years ago, I lived in Japan for a couple of years, and I learned Japanese, got fairly fluent at it. I'm not going to say it was good, but I got to where I could converse with people really well. And I several times was asked to translate for somebody. And I'd be sitting in a meeting and needing to be translating from an English speaker to a Japanese person who was sitting beside me. And I'd go crazy trying to convert what they were saying into what these people would understand, because the critical thing I learned is that in every language there are words and phrases and ideas that don't have a direct translation into the other language. And that kind of stuff, when you're a translator, especially an inept one like I was, is really complicating. And then I've looked at that in so many other things, when a book gets translated, when an idea gets tried to be conveyed, we screw up in the translation all the time. Well, that's caused me to realize that in the world of principles, there are a lot of things that we think we understand that we really don't. And one of those, for instance, is the word love. In the English language, we have one word, and that's love, that when you examine it closely represents a myriad of semi-related ideas. But they're not all the same. But we call them all the same. And so when we hear the word love, it puts this pretty big, broad picture in our mind when what it maybe really meant when the original person said it was a very specific idea. And as an example, in the word love, when we're told to love our neighbors and love our enemies the way that we would love ourselves, so that's something that was spoken back in the times when they were using the Greek language in the New Testament. And in the Greek language, the way I understand it, I've been told that there's like 10 different ideas that had 10 different words in the Greek language that the translators all said, well, the only word we have that applies to that is love. So they called all of those things love in the English language. And I guess to make a long story short, I don't need to love my enemy who's persecuting me and hurting me and trying to kill me. I don't need to love them with the same type of love that I love my wife. They're different things, but there is a concept there that we need to get straight. So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time here, but this is a critical point. So ponder on this, maybe do some research, maybe we'll put another post up somewhere. So when we were talking about unconditional love, were we talking about teaching our children, our children, our enemies, to love themselves unconditionally the way that I love my wife? Or was it a different kind of love? And then we jump over to respect, and here's where we throw in the concept of unconditional. And I believe, and probably I overthink this, my wife tells me I do that all the time, but I believe that by its very definition, there is no such thing as unconditional respect. Because by its definition, respect is something that you give to another person or that other person earns because they did something or became something, were something of value. And I just, as an example, I had a really bad experience one time with an old boss when I was fairly young, and he came into the shop that I was working in, and he was mad about something we did, probably because he was mad about something happened in the other side of the shop, and he came in and was a total jerk, which just was normal for him, but he went off on us, and I'm sure we were all standing around with, stupid looks on our faces, and the last thing he almost yelled at us before he walked out of the shop was, "I don't care if you like me, but I demand that you respect me." And within seconds after that he walked out of there, I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Because respect is something that you earn from other people. It's not something you say, you have to respect me. And that was really a problematic situation at that time because he was not doing things worthy of respect. In fact, he was doing the opposite. He was doing things that were worthy of contempt. And so that's caused me to think a lot of times about this concept of respect, that it is earned. The people I respect have done something, maybe not to me, but I've seen them do something that I'm going, that's cool. That was worthy of my respect. You deserve to be lifted up for that. And maybe it's the way they treated me, they treated other people, maybe it's something they did. Maybe it's who they became. They became somebody who was a shining example to the world around them, and that deserved our respect. So, to me, putting the word unconditional with respect, and it might have been done in that book, and I think he was trying to make a point, and I'm still highly recommending you read that book because the principle in it's critical. But the more I've thought about it, the more I've thought that you can't put unconditional and respect in the same term. Respect is always conditional. And so when a lady is trying to look for something to respect in her husband, she can't just pick something out of the blue and say, "Oh, I respect you because you always do the dishes for me every night," when he doesn't, ever. Well, in his mind, saying that is not respectful, and it doesn't give him any feeling of being respected. It's artificial. It's fake. And so that's kind of the same thing that then goes to that concept of self-esteem that I was talking about, that we hear so much about today, was that you're just awesome because you are. And that's okay, and it's part of where I'm going with this whole thing, but it's not respect. It's something different than that. That's building somebody up. It's trying to help them feel better about themselves, different things like that. But that can be carried too far the other way to where we end up in that situation where we create somebody who thinks that I'm respectful because of who I am, respectable because of who I am. You should respect me. You should act like I say to, all of those kind of things. And we create a monster in some cases. And we got to be careful about that because that's not what we're trying to do as parents. Okay? So what it came down to then is like, okay, what's this concept? If we got 10 different concepts encapsulated in our English word for love, and we have this respect thing that you can't give unconditionally, what is it? What, even over here, which one of those 10 concepts or whatever is it that God's trying to teach us to have towards every single other person out there in humanity, even our enemies? What does he want us to be doing? And as Penny and I talked about that, I went, it's value. We need to give unconditional value to every other person on the planet. And that only makes sense if we have our spiritual picture correct. Because the reason that we value everybody, even somebody who might be a drug addict and an alcoholic on the side of the street, they still deserve for us to value them because they are literally a child, the offspring of God. And that's a concept that we have to get right in our mind, or none of the other things make sense. So we need to give unconditional value to everyone around us. We need to teach our children to have unconditional value for themselves because they are literally the offspring of God. He is their father, their dad. And he also has a very specific plan for them. They're not just some random mistake down here that he made. He put them on this earth for a purpose. And we need to help them find that purpose and pursue that purpose and fulfill that purpose and become whatever potential he designed for them. That's why every person on this planet has value. No matter what they've screwed up in their lives or anything else, that's still who they are, and that's why we value them. And so that then brought this whole question into what I believe is the correct perspective for me. Is it's not about teaching our kids to have unconditional respect for themselves. First, they need to put unconditional value on themselves because they're the offspring of God. And they have a potential and a destiny and a mission here on this earth. And then, when they start doing things that move them up the ladder of that progression and that destiny and that potential of theirs, they need to learn to hold respect for themselves for accomplishing those things and for doing them. And that's then where self-respect comes from. And also, then there's the love side of that. Then they can love themselves more perfectly because A, they have value, and B, they're doing the things that God put them here to do and accomplish to reach their destiny. And so all three of those things come into play. Then we can learn where to put them in the correct perspective, where for the females, the love part is more valuable to them, and for the males, feeling respected is more valued to them. And it's not that, the others aren't valued, it's just that in each situation there's a little bit of a thing here because, women, while they desperately want to feel loved, they want to feel respected too. We have to do that. And it's just backwards with the men. They're not way different. They're one slightly more important than the other. So I'm looking here, this is 23 minutes into this discussion. It's dragging out a little bit, but I'm cramming this in here as tight as I can, as quick as I can to try to make these points. And I hope that what this will do will teach you to think about the things that you encounter. And if you're learning a new principle and it sounds really good, but it's not quite right, then probably it's not quite right. And we need to say, okay, where's the total truth in this principle at so that I can do it 100% correctly? And when we can do that, then we can get ourselves moving in a correct direction that produces the right long-term results in our marriage, in our families, with our kids, in our relationships with other people, all of those things. And that's why learning principles is so valuable in our lives. Learning true principles and verifying that they're true and finding that out. And that's, I think, really the core of what I wanted to talk about today, because we can go through our lives thinking we're doing something and doing something because somebody else has said it's true forever and ever, and it might not be. And we keep wondering why we get weird results. This is why. Because we missed the principle mark by just a hair. And it took us down a path where we didn't really want to go. So there you go. That's my thoughts today for you. It's why we talk about the win-win family and creating a win-win family, and why we talk about principle-based parenting. It's exactly these things, and I am so glad she brought this point up. And I give great kudos to her for, first of all, being able to ask such a profound question, and second, being able to hear something that she learned and put it into practice. That's so incredible. And I just hope that what I share here would be of value and helpful in that situation. So there you go. Thanks for listening to me. Hey, it's me. I like to talk, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it caused you to learn something in everything. And here you go. Have an awesome day. Good luck with your parenting. Engage with us in the Win-Win Family community because it brings out topics like this all the time. And everybody can grow from this situation, I think. So great. Talk to you later.